Hey you guys, my name is Nyla and welcome to my virtual book club, Harmony of Her. This week we are reading Dr. Jackie Green, her book called Permission to Live Freely. This book is amazing. This is my second time reading this book, but I really wanted you guys to read along with me. So let's start with chapter 1. Okay, so chapter 1, the title is Permission to be Authentic. And the scripture that's listed here is, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb," which was in Psalm 139, verse 13. After reading chapter 1, what I reflected about was how I viewed myself. I think a lot of times when I look at myself in the mirror, I have a very hard time some days to see the person that God has made me to be, or the person that God knows that I am. And I think, when I stare at that reflection looking back at me, I think about all of my insecurities. I think about all of my failures and things like that. And this chapter speaks a lot about in those moments where you're not feeling so confident, or you look in the mirror and you don't really like what you see. Dr. Jackie Green reiterates often here that we have to remind ourselves to believe what God says we are, who he says we are, and be firm in that truth. And there's multiple verses within the Bible where Jesus is telling us who we are. And I think that it's easier said than done. Like when you're having a weak moment, I know myself, like if I'm looking in the mirror or if I'm just having a bad day and I'm kind of like self-doubting, it's not always easy for me to snap out of it and be like, oh, you know what? God says I'm better than this. Like sometimes I'm just really down in the dumps and it's like hard to snap out of it. But I really do like how she talks a lot about her experiences, how, sometimes when she would look in the mirror, she didn't always feel like her best self. But she made sure to always bring herself back to God and allow him to remind her who she is through him, through his lens. And here, something that I underlined, if you guys have the book, it's on page 5. And Dr. Jackie Green, she says, "I noticed with fresh eyes the woman God had always seen. I also heard his voice assuring me of the truth." And this is when she looked at herself in the mirror. And it says, God spoke to her and said, "Jackie, lean on me. You're made in my image. You carry my DNA. You have dominion here, and you can do it." I reread this part of the chapter numerous times because honestly, it was like self-affirmations for me, because I think a lot of times we feel like we're all alone here. And I remember like, wait a minute, like God is here with me all the time. Jesus is here with me all of the time. And those moments in my life where I just feel like I do not have the strength, I can always lean on Jesus to push me through. And have to remember, I think too, when things in our life don't work out, I'll speak for myself. I know this might sound silly, but something that I do often and I'm trying to work on, honestly, is when something's not going right in my life, it's not, it's just not working out, I reflect on it in the sense, how do I say this? I think about it like, okay, if that didn't work out, what was so wrong with me? Like, is it me? I'll always do that. Like if something is just going wrong, something's not working out, someone doesn't like me, something like anything to that extent, the first thing I always think is, what was my part in that? What's wrong with me? What's missing within me? And to be honest, that's such a silly way to think, because God made me just the way I am in his perfect image. There's nothing wrong with me. It's just whatever that was does not serve me and does not align with the path that God has for me. And I have to keep reminding myself that when things don't work out, God is literally protecting us. It may not feel that way. It may hurt. It just may be everything we don't want. However, when we look back, we probably will be able to say like, wow, he really was protecting me from whatever was going on with that. So I love that she speaks that into herself, Dr. Jackie Green. Some other key points, some key takeaways for myself is here on page 7, I underlined, it says, "It makes me wonder, who's in the room where God has called you? Who's waiting for you to walk in and offer the gifts that you have been given? It may not be a sanctuary or an auditorium. Maybe it's a nursery, or it's the bleachers at a little league game. It might be a boardroom. It might be the hospital bedroom where your grandmother is preparing to meet Jesus. As I think about that room where you're being called and the people to whom you're being called, I also think about who it is that God has made you to be. It began to imagine, I began to imagine who your creator has designed you to be. And I can't help but wonder who you saw when you look in the mirror this morning. I underlined this section because it was significant to me, especially the part about who's in the room where God has called you. Right now I'm unemployed. I'm looking for a job and I haven't had much career success. I have my bachelor's, I have my master's, I've worked in so many different places, but things just didn't work out. And I used to think maybe, I should be an entrepreneur. Maybe trying to work at these different companies, having a 9-to-5 just isn't for me because it always just ends in me being unemployed in the end of it all. And it put me in a little bit of a depressed state, especially right now. We all know if you're unemployed, applying to jobs every day in itself is exhausting and it's its own job. But I try to remember that, the best is yet to come. My best days are ahead of me. But sometimes the enemy makes me feel like my best days was behind me. Like I already lived my best life. Now I'm just here being like a loser. And that's so not true. But like I have my days where I'm just like, yo, like what is even going on right now? Like what is even this? But I try to remain positive and remain in prayer. And like I said, just to reiterate, my best days are ahead of me. There are people that I literally do not know that love me. And that's even crazier. Future friends, future relationships, future, colleagues, like people who would really, truly value me and deeply love me. And I'm just like, I haven't even met these people yet. So at this point in my life, I'm like, Jesus, please rain down on me. Expose these people, like lead me to these jobs, like help me. Cause I'm like reaching my breaking point some days of being unemployed for almost 2 months, but we're trying. Yeah. So that statement was really valuable to me. I also liked here, this is on page 9 of chapter 1, Dr. Jackie Green, she says this: when you're not being who God made you to be, you're likely living as either one, less than, more than, or other than who God made you to be. I love this statement. I'll read it again. When you're not being who God made you to be, you're likely living as less than, more than, or other than who God made you to be. To be honest, I think I've been living less than, more than, and other than. I think all of the above for me. That doesn't sound good, but it's a journey. I'm still trying to make intentional decisions about my life to ensure that it's aligning with what God wants for me. I'm at a point where I don't even care what I want anymore. It's not about me. It's not my life. It's God's life. And I just want to be aligned so that my nervous system feels safe, that I feel happy. But I love this statement, and I think it's something that we all should reflect on. Like, are we living less than what God has called us, or more than, or just completely out of alignment? And I think most people are out of alignment, but the noise of the world can be so loud. Just how fast paced the world is can be so overwhelming to the point you don't even realize it. This is why I love reading books like this, especially like Bible-based self-help books, because it's very grounding to me in this fast-paced place we call life. It really humbles me. It makes me sit down and think about what is all of this really about. And where I am right now, I'm literally rebuilding my life. I am restarting. Like I decided my old life was not working out for me. I threw it out into the garbage can, threw away the key. I'm starting over and pivoting, and that's okay. Ultimately, the main point of chapter 1 is just those days where you're not feeling like yourself, you're not feeling fully confident, you don't even want to look at yourself in the mirror. I didn't say that right, in the mirror. Just try your best to think about all of the things that God has called you to be, what he has already said who you are, which is a fact and it's the truth. And back to Psalms where, he created you in your mother's womb, exactly how, you were supposed to be. How I look right now, this is exactly what God wanted me to look like. This is how he wanted me to sound. This is how he wanted my personality to be. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with me. And I had to realize when in those instances in my life where I felt inadequate, it was because I was out of alignment. It had nothing to do with me, my value there, or my characteristics, or me not being enough. You're always enough. You're just not in the right space. You're not in the right crowd. You're not on the right path. But when you are aligned with God's calling for your life, I promise you're going to feel so much love, so much peace, mental clarity. It's so true. So I think we all have to remind ourselves of that. And at the end of chapter 1, what I love about this book is Dr. Jackie Green, she includes a page of reflection and asks the reader several questions. And I'll review them with you guys now. So it says, embrace permission exercise. The first question, when you look in the mirror, what do you see? So I answered this in my journal recently, and this is probably going to sound sad, but when I look in the mirror, I still see all of my downfalls. I know that sounds so dark, but I see a lot of regret. I see just myself just wishing like, dang, I wish I did that different or said that differently or, what have you, but you can't go back in time. Some days I'm like, I see a beautiful girl. I see a funny girl. I see someone that is a good person, but due to my circumstances from like the end of 2024 to the beginning of 2025, I have to intentionally pull myself out of this mental little rug that I'm in recently. I have to admit, like, I can't sugarcoat it. I'm not here to lie or anything like that. But yeah, I was struggling with depression, still am. Every day is different for me. But for the most part, when I do look in the mirror, I see a work in progress. I see an opportunity for change, opportunity to start over, and that's a blessing because there's so many people that did not wake up this morning and they don't have the opportunity for change, to pivot, to do something new. And I do. So I think there's beauty in the unknown. The second question is, as you look back on your life, reflect on who you used to be when you were younger and less mature. How does she compare to who you are today? Oh my God. When I think about myself, like as a teenager, okay, let's back it up. When I think about myself, like as a child, when I say a child, anything under 12 years old, very quiet, timid, never spoke up for herself, afraid to speak up for herself because I didn't want to be yelled at. I didn't want to be put down. People pleaser to the maximum because I wanted people to like me. When I was in high school, my freshman year, I wanted to have friends so bad. And I used to like give people like my J14 magazines. I used to give people like my just belongings, thinking that would make them be my friend. Honestly, I got robbed. I got so robbed. That's so stupid. Oh my gosh. I don't know why I thought that equated to friendship, or I was trying to buy people friendship. Like, I don't know what was going on with me. Like, embarrassing. But I'd say definitely overall, like when I think about myself, when I was younger, definitely a people pleaser, anxious, didn't enjoy being in large crowds, just like needed some love, needed a little extra love. And now that I'm an adult, I definitely see the impact of my experiences, but it's okay because I'm very reflective and I'm working through them all. But yeah, I just wish I can go back and just hug that little girl, but it's okay. And the last question is, This week, well, it's not a question, it just says, it's a prompt. This week, grab a notebook or a journal and spend some time writing and reflecting on your life. This may lead to a moment of celebration or an awareness of an area that the Father still desires to touch. I'm currently still journaling through this piece and writing down all of the blessings I've had in my life, all the positive things that have happened in my life. Even like I mentioned previously, the end of my 2024 was really ugly. Like, I got into a car accident, totaled my car, mourning a breakup, unemployed, just ugly stuff. Really ugly, nasty work. But I'm trying to remember the blessings here. I didn't lose my life in that car accident. The car insurance company blessed me with a decent check to get a new car. I still have my apartment. I have a roof over my head. I have food in my refrigerator. I have clothes on my back. All things might not be what I desire at the moment, but I still have my life. So I have to be very, very appreciative of that, because not everybody has that. Yeah. And then at the end of each chapter, she also includes a closeout prayer, which I think is super duper nice. And I think we all should. You can always recite the prayer, even add to it for your own personal prayer. But yes, I hope you guys enjoyed this review of chapter 1 with me. I look forward to seeing you all next Monday as we review chapter 2. I hope you guys have a blessed week, and I will see you next Monday. Take care, everybody. Bye.